When I first started learning English, I focused mostly on reading and writing. I would spend hours memorizing vocabulary lists and completing grammar exercises. But when it came time to speak, I froze. I couldn't put the words together quickly, and I felt embarrassed about my pronunciation. It was frustrating because I understood more than I could say. Every time I tried to speak, I sounded slow and unsure, and that made me even more nervous. At school, I avoided speaking up in class, and during conversations, I kept my sentences short. I wanted to speak like native speakers, but I didn't know how. I watched movies and listened to music in English, but I didn't really listen. I only looked at the subtitles. I didn't realize that I was missing something very important: the natural rhythm, tone, and structure of spoken English. I thought speaking fluently was only about knowing the words, but it was more than that. One day, I met an exchange student who spoke 3 languages fluently. I asked him how he became such a good speaker. He told me something simple but powerful: I listen and repeat every day. He explained that he chose short clips of native speakers, listened carefully, and repeated exactly what they said, copying the tone and speed. At first, I didn't believe it could work. It seemed too easy, but something in me said I should try it. So I found a short video on YouTube, just 1 minute long, and I listened to it over and over. Then I paused after each sentence and repeated it. At first, I felt awkward, and I didn't sound like the speaker. But the more I practiced, the better I got. After just 1 week, I noticed something incredible. My tongue started to move more freely, and I could say things faster. My pronunciation improved without me even thinking about it. That was the beginning of a new method for me. Listening and repeating became a daily habit. I stopped worrying about being perfect and started focusing on sounding natural. I wasn't just learning words anymore. I was learning how to speak. It changed everything about how I learned English. Chapter 2: Learning Like a Child. When babies learn a language, they don't start with grammar books or vocabulary tests. They listen to their parents, to songs, and to the world around them. They hear the same words and sentences over and over until they begin to repeat them. This natural process is how humans learn to speak. I realized that if I wanted to speak English fluently, I needed to learn like a child by listening and repeating. I started using this idea with short conversations from podcasts and YouTube. Every morning, I chose one clip, usually something less than 2 minutes. I played it again and again, listening for the sounds, intonation, and rhythm. Then I spoke with the same energy and emotion as the speaker. I didn't worry about understanding every word at first. I just tried to sound like them. Soon, I noticed a huge change. My mouth started to remember the patterns of English. I didn't have to think about how to say things. They just came out naturally. I was building something called muscle memory. It's like learning to play an instrument or ride a bike. The more I practiced repeating what I heard, the more automatic it became. I also discovered that listening and repeating helped me think in English. Before, I used to translate from my native language, which made me slow. But now, I was learning complete phrases and sentences directly in English. I didn't need to translate anymore. This saved time and helped me speak much faster and more confidently. The more I repeated, the more I remembered. Words and expressions stayed in my brain because I was using them in a real context. Listening and repeating wasn't just about pronunciation. It was about training my brain and mouth to work together in English. And every day, I felt more like a real English speaker. Chapter 3, Creating a Daily Routine. Once I saw how powerful the listen and repeat method was, I decided to build a daily routine. I wanted to make listening and repeating part of my life, like brushing my teeth or drinking water. I created a simple schedule, 15 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes in the afternoon, and 15 minutes before bed. That added up to 40 minutes a day just for speaking practice. I chose audio clips that I enjoyed, like movie scenes, interviews, and motivational speeches. I tried to pick content where the speaker had clear pronunciation and natural conversation. I downloaded the audio and used an app to slow it down when I needed to. Then, I listened closely and repeated each sentence until I could match the speaker's speed and tone. At first, it was hard to stay consistent. Some days I felt tired or lazy, but I reminded myself that fluency doesn't come from studying once in a while. It comes from regular, focused practice. I kept a journal to track my progress, writing down what I practiced each day and how I felt. Over time, I saw real results. I started understanding fast English more easily and felt more relaxed when I spoke. Listening and repeating also made my grammar better without me studying it directly. I started to feel when a sentence sounded right or wrong. My ear got used to correct English structure, and I began using grammar naturally. It was like learning the rhythm of a song. I didn't even know the rules to sing it. This routine gave me confidence. I stopped being afraid of making mistakes because I had practiced the words many times. Speaking became less scary and more fun. I even started recording myself and comparing it to the original audio. Hearing my progress was motivating. I could see that I was really becoming fluent. Chapter 4, Speaking with Confidence. One day, I joined an English conversation club online. I was nervous at first, but I reminded myself of all the sentences I had practiced. When it was my turn to speak, I didn't hesitate. The words came naturally. I could hear myself speaking with better pronunciation and rhythm, and the other members noticed. They said, "Wow, you sound like a native speaker." That moment changed everything for me. I realized that I could speak English fluently if I kept practicing. I wasn't perfect, but I was clear, confident, and easy to understand. I wasn't translating anymore. I was thinking in English and expressing my ideas smoothly, and all of that came from months of listening and repeating. I started helping others in the group. Many of them had the same problem I used to have. They understood English but couldn't speak it well. I told them about my method and encouraged them to try it. I even shared some of my favorite audio clips and explained how to practice. Some of them started using it, and soon they saw improvement too. Confidence doesn't come from knowing every rule. It comes from using the language in a real way. Listening and repeating made me feel ready to speak at any time. I stopped feeling shy or embarrassed. I knew that I had trained my mouth and mind to speak English like a real conversation. And every time I spoke, I improved even more. Speaking English became a joy. I started watching movies without subtitles, repeating funny or powerful lines, and using them in real life. I made new friends who spoke English, and we practiced together. My world grew bigger, and I felt proud of what I had achieved, all because I had started by listening and repeating. Chapter 5: The Journey Never Ends. Now, English is part of my daily life. I use it at work when I travel and when I meet new people. But I still listen and repeat every day. Why? Because fluency is not a final destination. It's a journey. The more I practice, the more I grow. There's always a new word to learn, a new accent to understand, and a new way to express myself. Sometimes I go back to the basics and repeat simple phrases. Other times I challenge myself with fast conversations or complex interviews. The key is not to stop. Listening and repeating keeps my English fresh and strong. It's like going to the gym for my speaking skills. If I stop, I lose strength. If I continue, I become even more fluent. I also explore different types of content: news, comedy, TED Talks, and real-life conversations. Each one teaches me something new. I pause, listen carefully, and repeat with emotion. I imagine that I am the speaker. This helps me connect with the language deeply. I'm not just copying. I'm becoming part of the language. Whenever someone asks me how to become fluent in English, I tell them the truth. Listen and repeat. Do it every day. Don't just hear the words. Feel them, say them, and live them. Speak with passion, even if you are alone in your room. With time, your mouth will learn the flow, and your brain will respond faster. Learning English changed my life. And it all started with a simple step: pressing play, listening carefully, and repeating with all my heart. That method opened the door to fluency, and now I'm walking through it every day. Chapter 6: From Repetition to Spontaneity. As I continue to listen and repeat every single day, something remarkable began to happen. I no longer needed to memorize what I was going to say before speaking. My responses became more spontaneous, more natural. I started to form sentences in real time without stopping to think about grammar rules or vocabulary lists. It was as if the language had become a part of me. This shift didn't happen overnight, but through consistent practice, my brain had absorbed the rhythm and structure of English so well that it began producing language automatically. It felt freeing and exciting to finally say what I wanted, when I wanted, without hesitation. This new fluency wasn't just about speed. It was about confidence and comfort. I could now join conversations, ask questions, express opinions, and even make jokes without overthinking. people started reacting to me differently. They no longer slowed down when speaking to me. They treated me like a real English speaker. That sense of inclusion boosted my motivation even more. I realized that this fluency had not come from textbooks, but from mimicking real speech, real people talking about real things. That's the beauty of listening and repeating. It connects you to authentic language. I also became more aware of how native speakers actually speak. I notice how they link words together, use contractions, and express ideas with tone and gestures. Listening and repeating made me more observant. I started paying attention not just to words, but to the music of English, the way it rises and falls, the pauses, the energy behind certain phrases. By copying those sounds again and again, I trained my ear and voice to match the flow of English naturally. That musical awareness became one of my greatest tools in sounding fluent. Another unexpected benefit was the improvement in my listening comprehension. Because I was so used to hearing natural speech and repeating it, I became much faster at understanding English in real situations. Whether it was a phone call, a podcast, or a fast conversation in the street, I could keep up without feeling lost. My brain was used to processing spoken English, and it no longer needed subtitles or extra time. Listening and repeating didn't just make me speak better. It made me understand better, too. This chapter in my journey was powerful because it showed me how far I had come. From someone who froze when asked a simple question to someone who could talk for minutes without stopping, all thanks to a simple daily habit. Listen, repeat, improve. That was my rhythm, and it kept pushing me forward one sentence at a time. Chapter 7. Breaking Through Plateaus. After several months of practice, I hit something that many language learners experience: a plateau. I was no longer improving as quickly as before. My speaking was good, my pronunciation was clear, and I felt confident, but I wasn't advancing to the next level. At first, I felt frustrated. I thought maybe I had reached my limit. But then I realized this was a sign, not a failure, but of growth. The brain often needs time to catch up with progress, to organize everything you've learned before making the next leap. To push through this stage, I changed my strategy slightly. Instead of repeating simple clips, I began working with more complex and diverse material. I started listening to interviews with different accents, debates, documentaries, and longer conversations. This new challenge forced me to stretch my abilities. I didn't just repeat anymore. I acted out the lines. I imagined I was in the situation, speaking with purpose, using emotion, and truly living the words I said. That level of engagement reignited my progress and helped me break through the plateau. I also began to shadow entire paragraphs without pausing. Shadowing means speaking at the same time as the speaker, matching their pace and tone. It's difficult at first, but it trains you to think and speak in real time, just like in actual conversations. This method made my responses faster and smoother. It was like jogging next to someone more experienced. You push yourself to keep up, and in doing so, you grow stronger. Another thing that helped me during this period was reviewing what I had already learned. I went back to old recordings of myself and compared them to my current voice. I could clearly hear the difference. My pronunciation, tone, and speed had all improved. That motivated me to keep going, even if I couldn't always feel the progress day by day. Improvement doesn't always feel fast, but it adds up. The most important lesson I learned during this chapter was that fluency isn't a straight road. It's full of ups and downs. But every time you listen and repeat, you're reinforcing the skills that matter. Even when progress feels slow, you're still moving forward. And eventually, that next level becomes your new normal. Chapter 8, Using Real-Life English. To truly master a language, you have to go beyond the classroom and enter the real world. After months of using audio clips, I decided to take a bold step. I would start using English in real conversations with native speakers. I found language exchange partners online, joined English-speaking forums, and even started helping tourists in my city. Every time I spoke with someone, I applied the sentences and expressions I had learned through listening and repeating. To my surprise, they worked perfectly. These conversations were not always easy. Sometimes I made mistakes. Sometimes I didn't understand everything, and sometimes I got nervous. But I reminded myself that I had trained for this moment. I had repeated these types of sentences hundreds of times. My mouth knew what to do, and my ears could pick up the sounds. Most importantly, I had learned to trust myself. I wasn't afraid of silence or errors. I knew how to recover and keep going. I also learned that native speakers don't speak perfectly either. They make mistakes, change direction mid-sentence, and use lots of informal language. Because I had listened to real speech so much, I was ready for this. Listening and repeating had exposed me to natural English, not textbook English. That made my interactions smoother and more meaningful. I could relate to the way people spoke, and I could respond in a way that felt natural. This experience helped me move from student to speaker. I no longer saw English as a school subject, but as a tool for real connection. I wasn't just practicing anymore. I was participating, and each conversation became a new opportunity to grow. I recorded some of my calls with permission and used them as new material to listen and repeat. That way, I kept learning from real experiences. This chapter of real-life practice deepened everything I had learned. I started to see English as a living thing, something I could use to explore the world, make friends, and express myself fully. The listen and repeat method had prepared me, and now I was using it for its true purpose. Communication. Chapter 9. Teaching others what I learned. The more I improved, the more I wanted to help others do the same. I remembered how lost I felt in the beginning and how many times I wanted to give up. So I started sharing my journey on social media and in language learning groups. I explained my daily method, gave tips, and encouraged others to try the listen and repeat technique. Many people were surprised by how simple it was and how effective. I told them not to worry about sounding silly. I told them to find a quiet space, play a short audio clip, and speak out loud with energy and confidence. I reminded them that fluency doesn't come from being perfect. It comes from practicing out loud, every day, even when no one is listening. I also shared how I use voice recording apps to track my progress and how powerful it is to hear your improvement over time. Some of the people I helped started to see results in just a few weeks. They messaged me saying they could speak more easily, understand conversations better, and feel less afraid when talking. That made me incredibly happy. I realized that teaching others reinforced my own knowledge and kept me motivated. I became part of community, and we help each other grow. I even gave online workshops where I showed people exactly how to listen and repeat effectively. We used short movie clips, motivational speeches, and interviews. We practiced together, repeating lines with emotion and purpose. Watching others improve reminded me how important this method is and how it works for anyone, no matter their background or level. Teaching others was one of the most rewarding parts of my journey. It reminded me where I started, showed me how far I'd come, and gave me the chance to inspire others to follow the same path. The power of listening and repeating wasn't just changing my life. It was changing others too. Chapter 10, A Lifelong Practice. Now, years after I first discovered the power of listening and repeating, I can say without a doubt that it was the most important habit I ever built in my language journey. But even now, I still practice it. Fluency is not something you achieve once and forget. It's something you maintain, nurture, and grow. Just like athletes train every day to stay in shape, language learners must keep speaking, listening, and repeating to stay sharp. I make it a point to keep English in my daily life. I listen to new content, mimic new voices, and keep exploring new accents and expressions. I know that the moment I stop practicing, I begin to lose my edge. But as long as I keep listening and repeating, my fluency stays strong. The language becomes more natural, my vocabulary grows, and I continue to sound more native every day. This habit has helped me not only with English, but with other languages too. I use the same technique to start learning Spanish, and it worked just as well. Listening and repeating is universal. It trains your brain and your mouth to work together. It builds confidence, improves memory, and develops real, usable skills. It's not magic. It's muscle training for your voice and mind. Whenever someone asks me what the secret is to speaking English fluently, I smile and say, it's simple. Just listen and repeat. Every day. No excuses. It may not be flashy, but it works. It's the quiet, consistent effort that brings powerful results. It's the habit that turns learners into speakers, and speakers into confident communicators. This journey has taught me that language learning is not just about knowledge. It's about action. You must hear the words, speak the words, and feel the words. So if you want to speak English fluently, start today. Pick a voice you admire, press play, and repeat with passion. Keep going. Your voice is waiting to be heard. Ever since she was a little girl, Emma had dreamed of exploring the world. She would sit on the floor of her bedroom in Barcelona, looking through magazines filled with pictures of London buses, New York skyscrapers, and Australian beaches. But there was always one thing holding her back. She didn't speak English well. Every time she thought about traveling, she imagined herself lost in a foreign country, unable to ask for directions or order food. That fear kept her grounded for years. But one day she woke up with a strong decision. It was time to change her life, no matter how hard it would be. She packed a small suitcase, kissed her parents goodbye, and booked a one-way ticket to London. Arriving in London was both exciting and terrifying. The airport was loud and full of people speaking quickly, using words she barely understood. Emma tried to remember her English lessons from school, but nothing seemed to come out naturally. Still, she managed to ask the kind woman how to reach her hostel. It was a small victory, but it gave her the confidence to try again. She smiled, nodded a lot, and repeated phrases she had memorized the night before. Everything around her felt new and unfamiliar. The streets, the weather, even the way people walked and talked. But there was a strange beauty in the challenge, something that made her heart race with hope. Her first days in London were not easy. She got lost more than once, ordered the wrong food at restaurants, and misunderstood simple questions. However, instead of giving up, Emma used every mistake as a lesson. She carried a small notebook where she wrote down new words and phrases. Every evening, she would sit in a quiet corner of the hostel's lounge and practice pronunciation with a British map in front of her. Other travelers noticed her dedication and began helping her. One guy from Canada corrected her grammar, while a girl from India practiced speaking with her over tea. Emma realized she wasn't alone. Many people around the world were also trying to learn English, and they all had their own struggles and stories. Soon, she began to enjoy the process. She visited museums and listened to audio guides in English. She joined free walking tours where guides shared stories about the history of the city. And even though she didn't understand everything, she tried her best to follow along. She started to think in English, even if just a little, and began forming simple sentences in her mind throughout the day. She noticed that when she stopped translating from Spanish and just felt the language, things became easier. For the first time, English was no longer a subject. It was a tool that connected her to people, to places, and to her dreams. After 2 months in London, Emma felt different. She wasn't fluent yet, but she could communicate without fear. She made friends, laughed at English jokes, and even helped another tourist who was struggling with directions. It was then that she decided she didn't want this journey to end. London had been just the beginning. There were other countries to visit, new cultures to discover, and more English to learn. She opened her laptop one morning and typed, "Cheap flights to Canada." Her next destination was calling, and she was ready. Chapter 2. Across the Ocean. Emma arrived in Toronto on a cold morning. The air was crisp and the sky was a soft gray, but her excitement kept her warm. Unlike London, where people seemed a bit reserved, Toronto felt more open and diverse from the start. At the airport, she heard English spoken with many different accents, some Canadian, some Indian, some Caribbean, and it reminded her that English was a global language, not just a British or American one. It comforted her to know that there was no perfect way to speak, only a way that others could understand. Her confidence grew as she realized that she didn't need to sound like a native speaker. She only needed to express herself clearly and respectfully. She checked into a small shared apartment downtown and began exploring the city. Emma quickly signed up for a language exchange group that met twice a week at a cozy cafe. There, she met people from South Korea, Brazil, France, and even Russia. They all had the same goal: to improve their English and connect with others. Emma loved listening to their stories, especially because everyone had a different reason for learning English. Some needed it for work, others for travel, and some simply loved languages. These conversations became the best lessons she could ever have. Real, authentic, and full of emotion. Every mistake turned into laughter, and every correction became a gift. One of the people she became closest to was a girl named Layla from Morocco. Layla had a warm smile and a strong accent, and she wasn't afraid of making mistakes. In fact, she encouraged Emma to speak, without worrying about being perfect. "Don't wait for the right word," she said once. "Say something, even if it's wrong. That's how we learn." This advice changed the way Emma approached English. She stopped being so self-conscious and started being more expressive. Her vocabulary expanded naturally through practice, and her listening skills sharpened just by being around others and paying attention to tone, rhythm, and common expressions. As the weeks passed, Emma noticed something interesting. She started thinking in English more often during her morning walks, while reading signs, and even when dreaming. This mental switch was a major milestone for her. It meant she was beginning to internalize the language, to live with it instead of just studying it. She even began keeping a journal in English, writing down her thoughts, feelings, and daily experiences. Some entries were short and simple, others more detailed and reflective, but each one was proof of her growth. And every time she read back a page, she smiled at how far she had come. Before she left Toronto, Emma visited Niagara Falls. Standing near the roaring water, she reflected on her journey. She had come from Spain with just a suitcase and a few memorized phrases, and now she could talk, laugh, and even argue in English. It hadn't been easy, but it had been worth it. With the sound of falls in her ears, she made a promise to herself. She would keep going. She would travel to more countries, meet more people, and become not just a speaker of English, but a citizen of the world. Her next stop? Australia. Chapter 3. Down Under and Speaking Up. Landing in Sydney felt like stepping into a dream. The sky was a vibrant blue, the sunlight was warm, and the people walked with a kind of relaxed confidence that made Emma feel instantly welcome. She was nervous at first. Australian English was known for its unique slang and fast pace, but she was also curious. She wanted to hear the differences, to see how language changed from place to place. On her first day, a man at the airport said, "No worries, mate." And Emma laughed because she didn't fully understand what it meant, but she liked how it sounded. It felt friendly, and that was enough. She rented a room in a house shared with 2 university students, both native Australians. They spoke quickly, used slang constantly, and often joked with her in a way that forced her to really pay attention. At first, she struggled to follow, but they were patient and explained expressions like arvo for afternoon or bicky for biscuit. Living with them became an immersion experience. Emma learned new phrases every day, not from textbooks, but from conversations over dinner, jokes during breakfast, and even TV shows they watched together. She started writing down the slang she heard and practicing it in real-life situations, which helped her feel more connected to the culture. During her time in Sydney, Emma volunteered at a local library that offered free English conversation classes for immigrants. She wasn't a teacher, but she helped facilitate conversations, and this gave her a new perspective. She saw people just like her, nervous, excited, sometimes frustrated, trying to express themselves in English. She felt proud to be part of their journey, and at the same time, she realized how much she had grown. Emma wasn't just a learner anymore. She was someone who could help others. The experience made her more compassionate, more patient, and more inspired to continue learning. One afternoon, after a class, a little girl walked up to her and said, "Your English is very good. You talk like the people on TV." Emma laughed with surprise and thanked her, but that comment stayed with her for days. It made her realize that fluency is not about being perfect. It's about being understood, being brave, and staying curious. She had reached a point where English no longer felt foreign. It was becoming part of who she was. She still made mistakes, of course, but now she welcomed them as part of the process. She no longer feared being judged. She saw each error as a sign of progress. Emma spent 2 months in Australia, exploring the coast, talking to locals, and challenging herself with every conversation. She loved the country, the people, and the way language had brought her closer to the heart of it all. But as always, her feet began to itch for the next adventure. She wanted to keep growing, keep learning, and see where English could take her next. With a heart full of memories and a mind full of words, she booked a flight to her next destination, the United States. Chapter 4, The American Challenge. Emma landed in New York City with wide eyes and a heart full of anticipation. The city was alive in a way that overwhelmed her senses. Honking taxis, people rushing by, flashing lights, and endless conversations in fast, sometimes chaotic English. It was very different from London, Toronto, or Sydney. The American accent was sharper, faster, and full of expressions that she hadn't learned before. She quickly discovered that even everyday phrases like "what's up" or "you good" meant something different than she expected. But instead of feeling intimidated, she felt challenged, and that challenge motivated her. She stayed in a shared apartment in Brooklyn with 3 roommates from different parts of the U.S. one from Texas, one from California, and one from Boston. Each of them had a different way of speaking, which made her realize just how vast and varied American English really was. At first, their slang and cultural references went over her head, but little by little, she caught on. They joke with her, help her understand idioms, and made her feel like part of the group. She appreciated how they never laughed at her mistakes, but instead celebrated her efforts. This support helped her relax and grow more confident. Emma took advantage of everything New York had to offer. She went to free museum tours, poetry nights, and even joined a storytelling club where people shared personal stories in English. Listening to native speakers pour their hearts out made her realize the emotional power of language. She started to feel not just like a student, but like a communicator. One night, she signed up to tell a short story herself, something about her first days in London. Her voice shook, her hands trembled, but she told her story entirely in English. The audience applauded warmly, and afterward, someone told her, "You speak from the heart. That's what matters." While in New York, Emma also experienced her first real language breakdown. She had a long conversation with someone from the southern U.S., and she understood almost nothing. The accent, the rhythm, the expressions, it all felt alien. For the first time in months, she felt frustrated again. But instead of letting it defeat her, she researched Southern American English, watched videos, and asked questions. She realized that learning English wasn't about mastering one version. It was about understanding the many ways people use it. That moment humbled her and reminded her that there was still so much to learn. After 3 months in the U.S., Emma could understand most conversations, even in loud, busy places. She felt more fluent, more spontaneous, and more emotionally connected to the language. But she didn't want to stop there. She had learned English in English-speaking countries. But what about learning it where it wasn't a native language? She was curious about how others studied and practiced without immersion. So she made a bold decision. She would go to Japan next, not to learn Japanese, but to continue her journey with English in a totally new environment. Chapter 5, Learning and Translation. Arriving in Tokyo was like stepping into another world. The signs, the announcements, the customs, everything was new and unfamiliar. Unlike her previous stops, English was not the dominant language here. And for the first time in her journey, Emma had to use English with people who were also learning it. It was a strange but wonderful shift. She wasn't the only one searching for the right words. Everyone around her was doing the same. This made communication slower, but also more thoughtful. Every sentence became a small bridge built with care between two minds from different worlds. She enrolled in a small English conversation school in Shibuya, where locals paid to practice English with foreign travelers. Emma wasn't a teacher, but she was a fluent learner, and that made her a valuable resource. She helped students talk about their lives, dreams, and struggles while learning a great deal from them in return. The experience taught her how important patience and empathy were in language learning. Sometimes the words didn't come, but the connection remained. It reminded her that language is more than grammar and vocabulary. It's about presence, tone, kindness, and effort. During her stay in Japan, Emma met a woman named Aiko who had been learning English for over 10 years, but still felt insecure speaking it. Emma shared her own story, her early fears, her mistakes, and her journey across the world. They began meeting every week to talk in English, and over time, Aiko's confidence grew. Watching someone else improve through her support gave Emma a deep sense of purpose. It was in those quiet cafe conversations that she realized her journey was no longer just about learning English. It was about inspiring others to believe they could learn too. Emma also reflected on how far she had come. She no longer used translation apps, didn't write notes for every conversation, and no longer feared new situations. English had become a part of her life, not something she switched on or off, but something she lived in daily. She could think, feel, and even dream in English. More importantly, she had developed the courage to express herself in any situation, even when she didn't know the perfect word. That freedom, that voice, was the most valuable gift her journey had given her. As her time in Japan came to an end, Emma sat in a park under cherry blossoms, watching petals fall gently to the ground. She thought about the girl she had once been, shy, unsure, and scared to speak. And now here she was, having traveled across 5 countries, making friends, helping others, and building a life in a language she once feared. But her journey wasn't over. She still had one more place to visit. Home. She wanted to return to Spain, not just to share her story, but to show others that if you have the courage to speak, the world will listen. Chapter 6. Full Circle. Emma stepped off the plane in Barcelona with a strange mix of feelings, nostalgia, pride, and a bit of nervousness. She had left her hometown months ago as someone who barely spoke English, and now she returned as someone transformed. Everything looked familiar, the streets, the sounds, the smells, but she saw it all through different eyes. Her mind was full of memories and voices from different countries. She had learned so much, not just about English, but about culture, identity, and human connection. She wasn't just bilingual now. She felt like a bridge between worlds. Her first stop was her childhood home, where her parents welcomed her with tears and laughter. As she unpacked her suitcase, she shared stories of London buses, Canadian winters, Australian slang, New York poetry, and Japanese conversation cafes. Her parents listened in awe, not just because of the stories, but because of how fluently and passionately she spoke English now. They remembered the shy girl who had once hesitated to order food in English, and now here she was, confident, eloquent, and full of purpose. Her journey had not only taught her language, it had awakened a new version of herself. Emma began volunteering at a local language center, helping young people who wanted to learn English but didn't believe in themselves. She created workshops based on her experiences, how to learn through immersion, how to overcome fear, how to speak without translating. Students love her energy, her honesty, and her practical advice. More than anything, they connected with her story. Emma realized that her voice could inspire others to begin their own journeys. She didn't need to be perfect. She just needed to be real. One day, she was invited to give a talk at a nearby high school. Standing in front of students, she began by saying, "I used to be afraid to speak English, but I learned that your voice is more important than your mistakes." She shared how learning English had opened doors, not just in other countries, but inside herself. The students listened, some with wide eyes, others with soft smiles. And Emma felt a deep joy in knowing that her story might be the beginning of someone else's. That was the real meaning of her journey. Not just learning, but lighting the way for others. As the sun set over Barcelona, Emma walked alone along the beach. The waves whispered softly, and the wind brushed against her face. She took a deep breath and spoke aloud in English. "Thank you for changing my life." The language that once scared her had become her companion, her strength, her tool for love and understanding. She didn't know where life would take her next, but she knew she was ready, because she had learned the most powerful lesson of all. When you speak with courage, the world opens its heart. Chapter 7. A Voice That Echoes. After a few months in Spain, Emma's story began to reach more people than she had imagined. A video of her high school talk went viral on social media, and messages began pouring in from around the world. Students, teachers, travelers, and dreamers who saw themselves in her story. Some had never left their hometowns, but were determined to learn English. Others had faced humiliation, fear, or self-doubt. Emma was overwhelmed. She hadn't planned to become a public figure, but it was clear. Her voice mattered, not because it was perfect, but because it was true. She began writing a blog in English, documenting every stage of her journey. The city she visited, the challenges she faced, the people who helped her, and the lessons she learned. Her blog became a community of learners, a safe space where people could ask questions, share struggles, and support one another. Emma answered each message with care. Remember what it felt like to be confused, lost, and unsure. She was not a teacher in the traditional sense, but she was a guide, a fellow traveler on the road to fluency. Soon, a publisher reached out to her, asking if she would write a book about her journey. Emma hesitated at first. She had never seen herself as an author, but the idea stayed in her mind. She realized that her journey wasn't just hers anymore. It belonged to everyone who had ever tried to learn a new language, everyone who had ever dreamed of speaking and being understood. She spent months writing, pouring her heart into each chapter. It was hard, emotional work, but also healing. Each sentence was a memory, a tribute to her courage. When the book was finally published, titled A Journey Through Words, it received heartfelt praise. Readers from different countries wrote to say how it changed their lives, how it gave them hope. Some said they finally started speaking without fear. Others said they no longer felt alone. Emma felt humbled and grateful. She hadn't traveled the world just to learn English. She had done it to find her voice, and now that voice was helping others find theirs. It was a responsibility she carried with pride. With her message spreading, Emma received invitations to speak at international events, conferences, and schools. She traveled again, not as a student this time, but as a storyteller. Each time she stood on stage, she reminded her audience, fluency is not perfection. It is freedom. It's the ability to connect, to express, and to grow. Her words reached not just ears, but hearts. And though she still made mistakes, she never apologized for them, because she had learned that mistakes are signs of progress, proof that you are brave enough to keep going. Chapter 8, The Language Within. One cold morning in Berlin, Emma sat at a language learning summit surrounded by educators, linguists, and innovators. She was there to give a keynote speech. As she prepared her notes, she reflected on how far she had come. Just a year ago, she wouldn't have dared to speak in front of a crowd, much less in English. Now, she was about to share her message with experts and leaders. Her hands trembled slightly, not out of fear, but from the weight of the journey she carried inside her. When she walked on stage, she paused and looked at the crowd. "I'm not here because I speak English perfectly," she said. "I'm here because I kept going when it was hard." She spoke not about grammar or vocabulary, but about vulnerability, connection, and the power of persistence. She shared how English became a mirror in which she saw both her weaknesses and her strength. And she reminded them that learners don't need pressure. They need permission. Permission to try, to stumble, to feel frustrated, and to keep going anyway. After the event, several teachers approached her, saying her talk had changed how they saw their students. They realized they had been focusing too much on rules and not enough on confidence. Emma smiled, knowing that change begins with small realizations. She had always believed that teaching was more than instruction. It was inspiration. Her message had become a bridge between students and teachers, between fear and freedom, between silence and speech. In Berlin, she also met a young refugee from Syria who had learned English by watching movies and reading books at a shelter. His story touched her deeply. "English gave me a way to survive," he told her. "But now I wanted to help me live." Emma felt honored to listen. It reminded her that language is more than a skill. It is a lifeline. She promised herself to keep listening to voices like his, to keep amplifying the unheard stories. By the time Emma left Berlin, she understood that her mission was not just to share her story, but to help others tell theirs. She began collecting stories from around the world, ordinary people learning English in extraordinary ways. She wanted to create a global mosaic of courage and hope. It was no longer just a journey. It was a shared journey, a journey through words that belonged to all who dare to speak. Chapter 9, Building Bridges. Back in Spain, Emma launched a new project, an online platform where learners could connect across continents to practice English in real conversations. She named it Bridge Words, a tribute to connections language had helped her build. The platform wasn't just about practice. It was about people, Users created profiles, shared their stories, and matched based on their goals, interests, and time zones. From Brazil to Bangladesh, learners logged in every day to speak, listen, and grow. Emma was involved in every detail. She hosted weekly group calls, created challenge prompts, and even recorded videos answering questions from users. Her goal wasn't perfection, it was presence. Don't wait until you're fluent to speak, she told them. Speak to become fluent. Her energy and empathy made people feel safe. They knew that with Emma, mistakes were never punished. They were welcomed. She celebrated progress, no matter how small. The success of Bridgeword surprised even Emma. Within 6 months, it had over 10,000 users. Stories poured in. A teenager in Morocco gave his first public speech in English. A grandmother in Italy wrote a letter to her granddaughter in Australia. 2 strangers from Vietnam and Kenya became best friends. Emma read every message, often with tears in her eyes. This, she thought, is why I learned English. Not to impress, not to pass tests, but to build bridges where there had been silence. She also invited teachers to join the platform, not just to teach, but to listen and learn. She believed that teaching and learning were 2 sides of the same coin. When educators from different countries shared their methods and struggles, the platform became a space of mutual growth. Emma watched in awe as her idea turned into a movement where words didn't just teach. They healed, empowered, and united. As she watched her dream grow, Emma knew this was only the beginning. She had walked through fear, failure, and frustration, and now she walked beside others. The journey through words was no longer just hers. It was a path walked by thousands. And every day, someone new took their first step. Chapter 10, The Endless Journey. 1 year after she began her adventure, Emma stood once again on the same balcony in Spain where she had once stared into the sky, wondering if she'd ever speak English. The journey had changed her completely, not just in language, but in confidence, purpose, and vision. She had seen the world, not just with her eyes, but with her heart. And she had discovered that language is the key that opens people, that builds bridges, that makes strangers into friends. She no longer measured her success in grammar points or test scores. She measured it in conversations, laughter, letters, and voices. She remembered a time when she avoided English-speaking tourists, and now she was speaking at global conferences. She remembered nights crying over mistakes, and now she encouraged others to embrace their imperfections. Her journey had taught her that courage matters more than correctness, and connection matters more than control. One evening, she received a message from a young girl in Mexico. "I'm scared to speak English. I feel dumb, but I saw your video, and now I believe I can do it." Emma replied instantly, her heart full. "You're not dumb. You're brave. Every time you try, you win." She smiled, knowing that somewhere, someone was beginning their journey, just like she had. Emma continued to travel, learn, and grow. She still made mistakes. She still learned new words. But she no longer feared them. She embraced them as part of the dance of language. She understood now that learning never ends. Language is alive, and so is the learner. The journey never truly finishes. It only deepens, expands, and transforms. As she walked along a quiet street under the stars, she whispered to herself in perfect English, "I am proud of who I've become." The night breeze carried her words into the sky, where they would echo, inspire, and remind others. Every word you learn is a step forward, and every step forward is a victory.